The distress signal came from a dead system. No planets, no stations, just the cold skeleton of a star that burned out 1 billion years ago. That was the first strange thing. The second was that the signal used a frequency the Vorthon had not heard in 11 years. A human frequency. Admiral Drev of the Coalition's 7th Fleet stared at the readout for a long time before he spoke. His translator implant hummed. His aide, a young officer named Pell, waited in silence because Drev had that look, the look he got when something was wrong in a way that had no name yet. The war with the Krath Dominion had been going badly for 8 months. 3 sectors lost, 4 fleets destroyed. The Krath did not negotiate and they did not retreat. They moved forward like a tide, slow, steady, and absolutely certain of themselves. The Coalition had sent every ship it had, and the Krath had broken all of them. Drev had made the call to the Human Confederacy 2 days ago. It had cost him something to do it. Humans were small ships, small numbers, a young species with less than 400 years of spaceflight behind them. They sat at the edge of the Coalition as junior partners. Nobody expected much from them. Drev had called because he had run out of other calls to make. The response had not come from Earth Command. It had not come from any registered human fleet channel. It came from that dead system, on that old frequency, from a ship that did not appear on any scanner in range. The voice was calm. Low, human, male, it said, "Admiral Drev, transmit the coordinates of the Krath forward line. We have had eyes on Sector 9 for 6 days." Drev transmitted. He did not ask who was speaking. Something in that voice made him feel that asking would be a waste of time he did not have. Pell ran a scan, then another, then a third using the Coalition's oldest long-range array, the one that still used pre-digital pulse technology. Nothing. No human ship anywhere near Sector 9. No ship at all, except the burning Krath formation currently dismantling what was left of the Coalition's defensive perimeter around the Dreven relay station. 40 Krath warships. The relay station had 12 defenders left. Drev was already composing the evacuation order in his head when every screen in his command center went dark at once. Not black, white. A single line of text appeared across all of them at the same moment, in every language the Coalition translation system could render. Vessel identification, UCS BLACKSTAR, active. Below it, a number, a registry code. Pell pulled it up and found a file that was mostly redacted. What was not redacted was a single line of human military classification text. He read it 3 times before he showed it to Drev. It said strategic deterrence asset, authorized for independent deployment, no command override. Drev did not know what that meant in full. He turned to his human liaison, a quiet woman named Officer Rhea who had been embedded with the fleet for 2 years and who almost never volunteered information unless asked. He asked her now. She looked at the registry code for a long time. Then she looked at the screen. Then she looked at Drev with an expression he had never seen on a human face before, something between fear and a very particular kind of pride that had no easy translation. "It means," she said slowly, "that whatever is about to happen out there was not ordered by anyone on Earth, and it cannot be stopped by anyone on Earth either." Before Drev could respond, the long-range scanner let out a single tone, the tone it used for objects too large to classify in standard parameters. Something had just appeared in Sector 9. It was not on the Krath side of the perimeter. It had come out of nothing, out of empty space. The scanner ran its automatic sizing algorithm and returned a number that Pell read aloud without understanding what he was saying. The object was larger than anything the Coalition fleet had ever fielded. Larger, in fact, than the Krath's own flagship, which had until that moment been the biggest warship any species in this region of the galaxy had produced. It sat there, between the Krath formation and the burning relay station. Just sat there, silent and dark, like something that had always been in that spot and had simply chosen now to be visible. On every Krath ship in the formation, weapons powered up, targeting locks engaged, 40 warships preparing to fire on a single target. Then every Krath weapon went offline, simultaneously, in under 2 seconds. No shot fired, no energy discharge from the unknown ship, just silence, and 40 Krath warships drifting with dead weapons and the crews inside them suddenly aware, for the first time in this war, that they did not understand what they were looking at. Drev exhaled. It was the first full breath he had taken in 3 days. Rhea was already pulling up her personal communicator, not the official fleet channel. Something older. She typed a single message to someone whose name was not in any coalition database. The reply came back in 4 seconds. It said, "Tell your admiral to hold his position. This will not take long." The Krath did not scare easily. That was known across the galaxy. They had been fighting wars for 2,000 years and they had a word in their language for fear, but it was a word they used only to describe the feeling other species had. Not them. Never them. So when Warlord Rune stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his weapon systems go dark without explanation, what he felt was not fear. He told himself that very clearly. What he felt was something closer to anger, the specific anger of a thing that has never been touched suddenly being touched. He ordered a manual restart. His engineers ran the procedure in 11 seconds. The systems came back online. Targets reacquired. He gave the order to fire. The systems went dark again. Same speed, same silence, no visible energy from the unknown ship. Just a clean, quiet removal of everything his fleet could do to fight back. His chief weapons officer, a veteran named Gren who had fought in 40 campaigns and survived every single one, turned from his console and said nothing. He did not have anything to say. He had never seen this before. The unknown ship sent no hail, no demand to stand down, no declaration of intent. It simply held position and waited, the way something waits when it is not worried about the outcome. Rune studied it on visual scan. It was ugly, that was the first thing he thought. Not a warship the way the Krath built warships, which were tall and sharp and designed to look dangerous even when sitting still. This thing was wide and low and covered in panels that did not match each other, as if it had been rebuilt many times by people who cared only about function. There were scoring marks across its hull. Old ones. This ship had been in battles before many battles, and it had not been repaired for looks, only for use. That detail bothered Rune more than the weapon disruption. He opened a channel directly to the ship, standard coalition space frequencies. He used his own voice, which was something he reserved for enemies he considered worth addressing personally. He told the ship that the Krath Dominion did not recognize its authority in this sector. He told it that if it did not withdraw in the next 60 seconds, he would order the destruction of the nearest coalition colony world within reach of his second fleet. He gave coordinates. He made very clear he meant it. The response took 9 seconds. It was a single human voice, unhurried. It asked how many crew were aboard Rune's flagship. Rune paused. The question made no sense as a tactical question. He answered 412, because he was a warlord and warlords did not show confusion by refusing to speak. The human voice said, "Good, then this will be fast." 1 shot. Rune did not even see it leave the unknown ship. There was a sound on his bridge, a low tone from the long-range scanner, and then his flagship's sensors reported that the vessel designated Target 7 in his own formation had ceased to exist. Not exploded. Not burned. Ceased. As if the interior had simply folded inward at enormous speed, and then there was nothing left except a spreading ring of heat that dissipated in seconds. 412 crew members, gone in under 3 seconds. Rune did not order a retreat. He would not call it that. He ordered a tactical repositioning, all ships, new coordinates, maximum speed. 11 ships made it out of the sector. 3 were intercepted and destroyed during the withdrawal by the unknown ship's smaller escort craft, which appeared from nowhere exactly as their carrier had, and disappeared just as completely once the chase was done. On the Coalition command station, Admiral Drev watched the Krath formation scatter in silence. He had never seen a Krath fleet run. He had been in this war for 3 years, and he had never seen a single Krath ship choose to leave a fight rather than finish it. 11 ships. The human vessel had allowed 11 ships to escape. That number was specific. Drev noticed it. He asked Officer Rhea why 11 were permitted to go. She said, "Because 11 ships full of traumatized soldiers will spread a story no broadcast could replicate. By the time it reaches the Krath High Command, the story will have grown into something much larger than the truth." Drev said, "So the 11 ships are a message?" "The 11 ships," Rhea said, "are the whole strategy." On the Blackstar's bridge, Cole stood at the main viewport and watched the 11 retreating signatures fade from the scanner. His XO, Osai, pulled up a damage report from the brief pursuit engagement. Minor hull stress on Corvette 2, nothing significant. Osai asked if they were repositioning. Cole said yes. He pulled up a star map, deep Krath territory past the front line, a web of transit routes, logistics stations, supply relays, the infrastructure keeping 40 Krath fleets fed, fueled, and armed. He told Osai they were not going back to the Coalition lines. Osai looked at the map. She understood immediately. She asked how long they had before the Krath figured out what they were doing. Cole said, "They won't figure it out until it's done. That's the point." He gave the order to go dark, all external signals off, stealth systems full. The Blackstar vanished from every scanner in the sector as completely as if it had never existed. In the Krath command structure, 3 different intelligence officers filed 3 different reports about Sector 9. None of the reports agreed on what the ship was. All 3 agreed on one thing. It was not in any database. Not any database in the known galaxy. The hunt for answers reached the highest levels of Krath command before the hour was out. Nobody had won. There was a concept in Krath military philosophy that had no direct translation in any Coalition language. The closest version in human speech was something like, "The error of the enemy you do not see." It referred to the kind of defeat that comes not from a stronger force, but from a threat that operates outside the model of war you have built your entire civilization around. Warlord Rune had read that philosophy since he was a child. He had never expected to live it. 7 days after Sector 9, the Krath northern supply chain stopped working. Not because it was attacked in any way the Krath could detect, no ships destroyed, no stations burning, no debris fields. It simply stopped. Freighters arrived at relay points to find the relay points dark. Fuel depots registered empty when they should have been full. Munitions convoys reached forward positions and reported that the loading mechanisms at the origin stations had malfunctioned simultaneously across 6 different systems. The Krath military ran on a rigid logistics model. Every fleet had exactly enough supply to fight for 30 days without resupply. That number had never mattered before because supply chains did not fail. They were protected by orbital defense networks, deep space patrol routes, and the simple fact that no enemy had ever been insane enough to venture into the interior of Krath space. Something had changed that. Rune's intelligence chief, a sharp-minded officer named Voss, spent 4 days running analysis before she brought her conclusions to the War Council. She stood in front of the assembled commanders and told them that the unknown ship had been inside Krath space for at least 6 days before it appeared in Sector 9. She told them that based on the pattern of failures in the supply network, it had visited no fewer than 14 secured interior systems during that time. She told them that not one scanner, not one patrol ship, not one automated defense platform had registered its presence. One of the junior commanders asked how that was possible. A ship that size could not hide from that many sensors. Voss said she did not know how it was possible. She said she had read every record in the Krath database of human ship technology, and none of it, described a stealth capability even close to this. She said the most likely explanation was that the humans had been developing this vessel in complete secrecy for decades, and that the Krath had never looked at humanity closely enough to notice. That observation landed in the room like a stone in still water. The Krath had not looked closely. Humans were small. They were new. They sat at the edge of the coalition as a junior species with a few hundred ships and a history of less than 4 centuries in space. The Krath had not looked because there had seemed to be nothing worth seeing. Rune dismissed the council. He sat alone for a long time after. Meanwhile, deep inside the Krath logistics network, the Blackstar moved through the dark between star systems like something that belonged there. Cole stood at a secondary console with Osai beside him, watching the crew work. The Blackstar had a crew of 311, which was small for a ship its size, because it was built to do things that did not require large numbers of people. It required very specific people doing very specific things with very little margin for error. The fourth logistics target on their list was a moving one, a fuel convoy in transit through the Veth corridor, 17 freighters, and a light escort of 6 warships. Most commanders would have avoided it because mobile targets were risky. Cole approached it differently. He had the Blackstar go completely silent, no drive emissions, no heat output, drifting on momentum, and let the convoy pass within 800 kilometers. Then he sent 2 people across in a pressurized maintenance sled. Not soldiers, engineers. They attached signal disruptors to the underside of the lead freighter and 3 others while the Krath escort ships flew their patrol routes 50 kilometers out. The convoy arrived at its destination. The freighters connected to the receiving station. The disruptors activated and broadcast a data packet into the station's receiving system that looked exactly like a routine delivery confirmation, but contained a software fault that cascaded through the station's fuel transfer protocol and quietly locked every output valve closed. Not broken, locked. It would take the Krath engineers 3 weeks to find it because it looked like a routine administrative error. Osai watched the engineers return and reported no contact with Krath forces. She asked Cole if this was what war looked like from now on, 2 people in a sled and a piece of software. Cole thought about it, he said. Sometimes. The Krath fight with weight, mass, firepower, numbers. We fight with information and patience. A 2-person sled just cost them 6 weeks of fuel delivery to their entire eastern front. That is worth more than 100 ships. Osai said she understood the math. She asked if it felt like enough. Cole did not answer that one. 12 days into the Blackstar's operation inside Krath space, Admiral Drev received a communication from a Krath diplomatic relay, not a military channel, which would have been a demand. A diplomatic one, which was something the Krath had not used since before the war started. It requested a temporary ceasefire and a direct meeting with the captain of the unknown human vessel. Drev forwarded it to Rhea. Rhea forwarded it to a frequency Drev did not have access to. The reply from Cole was 3 words, tell him yes. The neutral zone was a dead system called the Ash Reach. No star, no planets, just a cold, dark field of ancient rock and dust that nobody had ever wanted. The Krath had proposed it. Cole had agreed without negotiation, which had apparently unsettled Rune's people more than a counteroffer would have. Rune arrived in his personal transport with an escort of 8 warships standing 50,000 kilometers back. He had agreed to no weapons in the meeting itself. Cole arrived alone in a shuttle with a crew of 2 pilots and no weapons at all, not even sidearms. He left the Blackstar 200,000 kilometers away, cloaked and silent. They met in the middle. A pressurized transfer tube connected the 2 crafts. Rune had set up a table and 2 chairs on his side because he had done the research and knew humans used furniture of that type. Cole noticed this and said nothing about it. Rune was large, twice Cole's height, covered in the ritual scarring that Krath warriors earned across a lifetime of campaigns, with a physical presence that had made lesser beings turn and leave rooms before a word was spoken. He sat across from Cole and looked at him the way a person looks at something that does not match their expectations. Cole looked back and waited. Rune asked without any greeting what humanity wanted from this war. He was prepared to negotiate resources, he said, transit rights, border adjustments. He named several things the coalition had been fighting over for decades, things that would have ended the war 3 years ago if the Krath had offered them then. He named them now as if they were reasonable concessions freely given, not as admissions of anything. Cole listened to all of it. Then he said humanity wanted none of those things. Rune waited. When nothing followed, he asked what Cole did want. Cole said, "For you to stop, that is all. Stop the expansion, return to your original boundary, rebuild what you have, never cross into coalition space again. No territory changes, no reparations, just stop." Rune sat with that for a moment. His expression did not change. Krath faces were not built for the same signals as human ones, but Cole had studied enough recordings to read the stillness that meant calculation. Finally, Rune said that Cole was asking as if the outcome of this war had already been decided. Cole said, "It has. I'm giving you the chance to understand that before your high command does." Rune said the Krath had not surrendered to any species in 2,000 years of war. He said this not as a threat, but as a plain fact, the way one states the boiling point of water. Cole nodded. He said, "I know. That is why I am not asking you to surrender. Surrender is for the end of a fight. I am asking you before the fight you cannot win begins. There is a difference. The Krath value efficiency. What I am offering is efficient." Something shifted in Rune then, not visible in any expression, but he went very still in a way that was different from his earlier stillness. He asked Cole how many humans were like the Blackstar, how many ships like it existed. Cole said, "Enough." Rune knew that could mean 1. He also knew it could mean 100. He knew, sitting across from this human, that he would not find out the truth by asking, because this man had built his entire operation around controlling what other people knew and when they knew it, and a direct question would get exactly the answer he chose to give. Rune had met many dangerous people in his life. He had been in rooms with warlords who had killed millions and generals who had won impossible wars. He had always been able to find the edge of a dangerous person, the point where their confidence stopped and their uncertainty began. He could not find it in Cole. He looked for it the entire time they sat together, and he could not find it. That, more than the Blackstar itself, told him what he needed to know. He stood. The meeting was 40 minutes long. He told Cole he would communicate his decision through the diplomatic channel within 6 hours. Cole stood as well. He said, "Take the time you need. 6 hours is enough." He returned to his shuttle. On the way back to the Blackstar, his pilots did not ask what happened. They had learned not to ask until Cole was ready. He sat in the back of the shuttle and looked at his hands for a while, which was something he did when he was thinking through things he would not say out loud. I met him at the docking bay. She could read the result in nothing specific, just the way Cole walked, the way he didn't quite look relieved. She asked how it went. He said, "He's going to say no, but he's going to mean yes. He just needs to find a way to mean yes that the Krath can live with." Os asked what that meant for the plan. Cole said it meant Phase 3 was still on, and that they needed to move quickly, before Rune's internal conflict resolved itself, and he convinced himself that trying one more attack was worth the risk. He gave her a list of 3 coordinates. She looked at them and went very quiet. He told her to begin preparation immediately. Nobody in the Krath Dominion knew what a corvette was. The word existed in old human naval records from water-based warfare, thousands of years before humanity reached space. Cole had kept the name because he liked the history of it, small ships that punched far beyond their weight, fast and expendable and almost impossible to track. The Blackstar carried 3 of them in its internal bays. They had been there since the mission began. The craft had scanned the Blackstar's exterior profile multiple times across the past 2 weeks and had found no indication of anything inside, because the bays were lined with the same adaptive plating that made the Blackstar itself invisible to most sensors. The 3 corvettes launched simultaneously at 400 hours ship time, when the craft command structure was in its lowest activity rotation. They went in 3 different directions. Corvette 1 hit the Northern Command Hub, a fortress station in the Reth system, 8 hours from the front line, heavily armored, defended by a permanent garrison of 40 warships. The corvette did not attack the station directly. It came in on a maintenance approach vector, broadcasting a signal that matched an automated resupply drone, a drone type the station received every 11 days. It got within 400 kilometers before the garrison realized the mass reading was wrong. By then it had already deployed its payload, not weapons, a cluster of small transmitters that latched onto the station's outer hull and immediately began broadcasting false orders to every craft fleet in the northern sector, retreat signals, emergency repositioning codes, commands to stand down and hold position, all formatted in the correct craft military encryption, because the Blackstar had been collecting craft signal traffic for 3 weeks. The northern sector went into coordinated confusion in under 6 minutes. Corvette 2 hit the Central Logistics Command, a moving convoy of command ships that served as the administrative brain for the craft's central front. The corvette identified the convoy, matched its speed, and destroyed only the 3 lead command ships with precise strikes before pulling away. The remaining convoy, dozens of vessels, was left completely leaderless, with no command structure and the false signals from Corvette 1 filling their communications. They stopped, waited for orders that did not come in any form they recognized as valid. 600 craft warships on the Central Front had no effective command for the next 4 hours. Corvette 3 was supposed to hit the Southern War Throne, Rune's home base, the Eternal Throne Station, the source of all top-level craft military authority. Rune himself was not there. He was still in transit back from the Ash Reach meeting. His command staff was there. His communications infrastructure was there. His ability to override the chaos from Corvettes 1 and 2 was there. Corvette 3 was detected at 800 kilometers. The southern system had different sensor arrays, newer, better, a system the craft had installed 6 months ago that worked on principles different from their standard equipment. It registered the corvette not by its emissions, but by the way it displaced microparticles in the dust field around the station. The corvette pulled away immediately. 42 craft warships gave chase. On the Blackstar, Cole watched the telemetry shift. He had 2 minutes to decide. He could let Corvette 3 withdraw. The plan would be 60% complete, significant but not decisive. Rune would recover his command structure, reassert control, and the window would close, or he could take the Blackstar into the southern system. He told Osai to wake up everyone not currently on duty. The Blackstar dropped its cloak and jumped. What happened in the southern system in the next 53 minutes was not clean. The craft defending force was experienced and motivated, and they had numbers. The Blackstar took 3 direct hits, real damage, not glancing blows. One of them ruptured a secondary power conduit on Deck 7. Crew members were working the fires before the alert finished sounding. 3 people on that deck did not make it out. Cole did not stop the engagement. He fought the way the Blackstar was designed to fight, not head-on, not exchanging fire for fire, but constantly moving, constantly disrupting, targeting the craft ship's ability to coordinate rather than their hulls when possible, their hulls when necessary. At the 53-minute mark, the last craft warship in the southern system was gone. Corvette 3, which had been holding at safe distance, returned to dock. Cole stood in the Blackstar's operations center and looked at the three simultaneous system readouts. Northern sector, in chaos. Central front, leaderless and stalled. Southern command, destroyed. Osai said the whole thing had taken 58 minutes. Cole said nothing for a moment. Then he asked for a damage report. She gave it to him. Structural damage on 3 decks, power reduction to about 70%, weapons at 65. And the 3 names from Deck 7. He asked her to record them in the mission log personally, not the automated system, her handwriting. She asked what they were doing now. Cole pulled up Rune's last known position, still in transit, now completely cut off from every fleet he commanded, sitting in the dark with the full knowledge of what had just happened and no way to respond to any of it. He sent a transmission to Rune's personal transport, short, no title, no formal address. You have 6 hours to decide. After that, I stop asking. He closed the channel. Osai waited. The Blackstar drifted, damaged and scarred in the silence of a system where 42 warships used to be. Rune spent the first hour of his 6 hours doing something that surprised even his personal guard. He did not call his admirals. He did not open a war council channel. He walked to the small ceremonial room at the back of his transport, a room meant for prayer and ritual acknowledgement, and he went inside alone and closed the door. The Krath had a ceremony for the moment a warrior recognized a force greater than their own. It was not surrender. Surrender was for the defeated. This was something older, the formal act of a fighter who has looked at the landscape clearly and chosen to survive it. The ceremony required honesty above all else. A Krath who performed it without genuine belief was considered to have died something worse than a battlefield death. Rune performed it honestly. When he came out, he called his council. He told them the war was over. One of his senior commanders objected immediately. They had 700 warships still active, still fighting on the Western Front. They had resources. They had time to call reinforcements from the outer dominions. Rune let him finish. Then he asked very quietly whether the commander thought 700 warships were enough to stop what had just destroyed 42 in 53 minutes. The commander had no answer. None of them did. At the 4-hour mark, the cessation terms left Rune's transport on a diplomatic channel, not a military one. The distinction was deliberate. The Krath would not formally capitulate to a military superior. They would negotiate diplomatically, as equals, because that was a version of this ending they could carry forward with some dignity intact. The terms were exactly what Cole had said in the Ash Reach. Full withdrawal, original boundaries restored, no reparations, no territorial changes, just stop. Admiral Drev received the transmission and read it 3 times. He had been in this war from the beginning. He remembered the first system they lost, the first fleet destroyed, the names of commanders who had not survived long enough to see this document. His hands were not entirely steady when he countersigned it. He sent a formal acknowledgement to the Human Confederacy, a request that the Blackstar be assigned as a permanent deterrence presence in coalition space, a standing guardian. He wrote the message carefully because he knew it was important. Rhea forwarded it to Cole's channel. Cole read it on the Deck 7 corridor, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall while repair teams worked around him. He read it twice. Then he drafted a response and sent it before Rhea could argue with him. He declined. He said the Blackstar was not an assignment. It was not a guardian. It would be where it chose to be, when it chose to be there. And the best thing the coalition could do with that information was share it quietly with anyone who was thinking about starting a war. Drev read the decline and after a long pause, decided it was probably the correct answer. I found Cole still in the Deck 7 corridor 2 hours later. The fires were out. The repair crews had moved to the next section. The corridor was quiet except for the distant sound of hull plates being welded back into place. She sat down beside him on the floor without asking. She had learned over the course of this mission that Cole processed things by being physically near where things happened. Deck 7, 3 people. He needed to be in the same space for a while. He said, after a few minutes, that the math of this kind of work was the worst part of it, not the danger, not the decisions made in 53 minutes with bad options on both sides. The math, the calculation that what they had done would save more lives than it cost. He said he believed the calculation was correct. He said believing it was correct did not make it feel any different in a corridor on Deck 7. Osai said she thought he was supposed to be the one who didn't feel things like that. Cole said he was not sure who told her that. She asked where they were going next. He stood up and walked back toward the bridge. She followed. He pulled up the navigation system and entered a set of coordinates, a region of space far from Coalition territory, far from the Krath Dominion, in a direction that most charts labeled as unmapped. There were signals coming from that region. Low-level, irregular, the kind of signals that looked like interference but weren't. She asked him what was out there. He said nobody was sure yet. Something new. Something that had started moving in a direction it shouldn't be moving in, toward systems that were not empty. She asked if the Coalition knew about it. He said they would, when the time came. Right now the Blackstar needed to go look at it first, because that was what the Blackstar did. It went ahead of the news, ahead of the fear, ahead of the war, and it tried to understand what they were dealing with before the damage was already done. He set the course and took them dark. In the weeks that followed, a phrase spread through the Krath military, spoken quietly, not officially, the way important truths move through a culture that is not ready to say them out loud. It was in the human tongue, which the Krath had never bothered to learn because they had never expected to need it. Do not make them angry, they do not forget, and they do not stop. Nobody could say where it started, it spread anyway.